B-52 Stratofortress. A long history. The Boeing B-52 Stratofortress is a long-range subsonic jet-powered strategic bomber that long has been trusted and relied upon by the United States Air Force, USAF. When called to action from the Cold War and the Vietnam War to Desert Storm and the global war on terror, this legendary bomber has always and will continue to deliver on its promises. When Michael Riggs, Boeing's B-52 program manager for radar modernization, started work on the B-52 almost 20 years ago, the newly hired engineering graduate expected to soon be moved off the Stratofortress program. I thought it was going to be kind of a short stint because it was an old aircraft. I thought it was an old aircraft because my dad flew it in Vietnam. So I thought, hey, I'll spend a little time on here, and I'm going to need to look for another platform to be working on. Riggs probably won't be the last Boeing employee to be outlasted by the big ugly fat fella, Buff, the nickname of the aircraft. The strategic bomber was introduced into service in 1955, and the USAF now expects it to fly beyond 2050. Design and development. But let's start from the beginning. Built to carry nuclear weapons for Cold War-era deterrence missions, the B-52 Stratofortress replaced the Convair B-36 Peacemaker, the largest mass-produced piston-engined aircraft ever built. Its development began even before September 1947, when the USAF, previously designated the U.S. Army Air Forces, AAF, became independent. On 23 November 1945, the AAF Air Materiel Command issued desired performance characteristics for a new strategic bomber, capable of carrying out the strategic mission without dependence upon advanced and intermediate bases controlled by other countries. The aircraft originally was to carry 5 or more turret gunners and a 6-man relief crew. It was required to cruise at 300 miles per hour at 34,000 feet, with a combat radius of 5,000 miles. The armament was to consist of an unspecified number of 20mm cannon and 10,000 pounds of bombs. On 13 February 1946, AAF issued bid invitations for these specifications, with Boeing, Consolidated Aircraft, and Glenn L. Martin Company submitting proposals. On 5 June 1946, Boeing's Model 462, a straight-wing aircraft powered by 6 Wright T-35 turboprops, with a gross weight of 360,000 pounds and a combat radius of 3,110 miles, was declared the winner. However, by October 1946, AAF began to express concern about the sheer size of the new aircraft and its inability to meet the specified design requirements. In response, Boeing produced the Model 464, a smaller 4-engine version with a 230,000-pound gross weight, which was briefly deemed acceptable. By early 1949, Boeing was preparing 2 prototypes, the XB-52 and the YB-52, both of which had been contracted for in early 1947. Although the YB was designated for service testing, both models were used to refine the original design. Noting stability and control problems that Northrop was experiencing with its YB-35 and YB-49 flying wing bombers, Boeing insisted on a conventional aircraft, and in April 1948 presented a U.S. $30 million proposal, $319 million today, for design, construction, and testing of 2 Model 464-35 prototypes. Further revisions during 1948 resulted in an aircraft with a top speed of 513 miles per hour at 35,000 feet, a range of 6,909 miles, and a 280,000-pound gross weight, which included 10,000 pounds of bombs and 19,875 U.S. gallons of fuel. Major design emphasis was on superior performance with minimum airplane and system complexity. This was to be achieved by a straightforward design that provided a high standard of systems utility and functional reliability. To do this, however, required a number of innovations not anticipated in the original specifications. Some of the design features, like the onboard hydraulic system, were physically the largest yet built, while others, like the pneumatic system, which powered many aircraft accessories, were radical departures from conventional designs. Nonetheless, the first flight test in 1952 proved successful, with performance exceeding original specifications. Despite initial optimism, it was apparent that additional development would be required. Of the original batch of 13 aircraft, which would normally have carried a test prefix, but were so costly and vital that they were regarded as likely to go straight into the active inventory, the first 3 were completed as B-52As and the rest as B-52Bs. The A's, which never entered the active inventory, were used for additional development work. The B-52B was followed by progressively improved bomber and reconnaissance variants, culminating in the B-52G and turbofan B-52H. To allow rapid delivery, production lines were set up at both Boeing's main Seattle factory and its Wichita facility. More than 5,000 companies were involved in the huge production effort, with 41% of the airframe being built by subcontractors. The prototypes in all B-52A, B, and C models, 90 aircraft, were built at Seattle. Nuclear deterrent. When the B-52 entered into service, the USAF Strategic Air Command intended to use it to deter and counteract the vast and modernizing Soviet Union's military. As the Soviet Union increased its nuclear capabilities, destroying or countering the forces that would deliver nuclear strikes, bombers, missiles, etc., became of great strategic importance. Throughout the Cold War, B-52s and other U.S. strategic bombers performed airborne alert patrols under code names such as Head Start, Chrome Dome, Hardhead, Round Robin, and Giant Lance. Bombers loitered at high altitude near the borders of the Soviet Union to provide rapid first strike or retaliation capability in case of nuclear war. These airborne patrols formed one component of the U.S. nuclear deterrent, which would act to prevent the breakout of a large-scale war between the U.S. and the Soviet Union under the concept of mutually assured destruction, MAD. It was also a key part of the air component of the nuclear triad, a 3-sided military force structure consisting of land-launched nuclear missiles, nuclear missile-armed submarines, and strategic aircraft with nuclear bombs and missiles. The triad was a central element of the U.S. military strategy and to a lesser degree that of the Soviet Union during the Cold War, with its concomitant arms race. The theory underlying the triad was that spreading the assets comprising the country's extensive nuclear arsenal across various weapons platforms would make the force more likely to survive an attack by the Soviet Union and to be able to respond to a first strike successfully. In November 1959, to improve the aircraft's combat capabilities in the changing strategic environment, the USAF initiated the Big Four Modification Program, also known as Modification 1000, for all operational B-52s except early B models. The program was completed by 1963. The 4 modifications were the ability to launch AGM-28 Hound Dog standoff nuclear missiles and ADM-20 Quail decoys, an advanced electronic countermeasures suite, and upgrades to perform all-weather low-altitude below 500 feet interdiction missions in the face of advanced Soviet missile-based air defenses. The B-52 also served in a non-lethal role. It carried an air-launched experimental aircraft such as the rocket-powered North American X-15, which first flew in 1959, and the scramjet-powered Boeing X-51, 2010. Vietnam. The B-52 thankfully never acted in its original primary role as a nuclear bomber, but it has served in conventional warfare. Its first combat mission, Operation Arclight, was flown on 18 June 1965 when 30 B-52Fs of the 9th and 441st Bombardment Squadrons struck a communist stronghold near the Bến Cát District in South Vietnam. The first wave of bombers arrived too early at a designated rendezvous point over the South China Sea, and while maneuvering to maintain station, 2 B-52s collided, which resulted in the loss of both bombers and 8 crewmen. The remaining bombers, minus 1 more that turned back due to mechanical problems, continued towards the target from between 19,000 and 22,000 feet. 27 Stratofortresses hit a 1 mile by 2 mile target box. A little more than 50% of the bombs fell within the target zone. Beginning in late 1965, a number of B-52Ds underwent big belly modifications to increase bomb capacity for carpet bombings. The modification created enough capacity for a total of 60,000 pounds using 108 bombs. Thus modified, B-52Ds could carry 22,000 pounds more than B-52Fs. Designed to replace B-52Fs, modified B-52Ds entered combat in April 1966, flying from Andersen Air Force Base, Guam. Each bombing mission lasted 10 to 12 hours and included an aerial refueling by KC-135 Stratotankers. In spring 1967, B-52s began flying from Utapao Airfield in Thailand so that refueling was not required. On 22 November 1972, a B-52D 550110 from Utapao was hit by a SAM while on a raid on Vinh in southern North Vietnam. The crew was forced to abandon the damaged aircraft over Thailand. This was the first B-52 destroyed by hostile fire. During the Vietnam War, 31 B-52s were lost, including 10 shot down over North Vietnam. Of the losses, 17 were shot down in combat operations, 1 was a write-off because of combat damage, 11 crashed by accidents, 1 was decommissioned because of combat damage, and 1 burned at the airport. However, some of the crashed in-flight accidents were due to missiles or anti-aircraft guns. B-52D tail gunners were credited with shooting down 2 MiG-21 fish beds on 24 December 1972. During Operation Linebacker 2, the B-52 Diamond Lil was headed to bomb the Thanh Nguyen Railroad yards when tail gunner Airman First Class Elbert E. Moore spotted a fast-approaching MiG-21. Moore opened fire with his quad .50 caliber guns at 4,000 yards and kept shooting until the fighter disappeared from his scope. Another gunner saw the MiG explode. Moore was the last bomber gunner confirmed to have shot down an enemy aircraft with machine guns in aerial combat. Desert War. After Vietnam, the experience of operations in a hostile air defense environment was taken into account. Accordingly, B-52s were modernized with new weapons, equipment, and both offensive and defensive avionics. This and the use of low-level tactics marked a major shift in the B-52's utility. The aircraft's flexibility was evident during the Gulf War and Operation Desert Storm, when B-52s struck wide-area troop concentrations, fixed installations, and bunkers, and decimated the morale of the Iraqi Republican Guard. On the 2nd and 3rd of September 1996, 2 B-52Hs struck Baghdad power stations and communications facilities with 13 AGM-86C conventional air-launched cruise missiles, or Calciums, as part of Operation Desert Strike. This mission, the longest distance flown for a combat mission, involved a 34-hour, 16,000 statute-mile round trip from Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana. The B-52 clearly lacks the capability of stealth aircraft, such as the B-2 and Lockheed F-17, to penetrate heavily defended airspace. But once air superiority has been achieved, the bomber has proved to be a workhorse. B-52s delivered 40% of all weapons dropped by coalition forces in Desert Storm. Later, the bombers attacked targets in Serbia during Operation Allied Force in 1999, in Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom in 2001, and again in Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. Modernization. In order to operate for 30 more years, the USAF and Boeing have incrementally been upgrading the B-52H with new hardware. Most recently, in July 2019, Boeing announced Raytheon as its selection to design, develop, and produce new active electronically scanned array AESA radars for the bomber, based on its APG-79 APG-82 system. Boeing says that the new AESA radar should improve the B-52H's navigation reliability, weather detection, and ground mapping, as well as target detection ranges and the number of targets that can be attacked simultaneously. Next on the to-do list is replacement of the B-52H's 8 Pratt & Whitney TF-33P3 turbofans. The USAF aims to reduce aircraft downtime and maintenance costs, while gaining more electrical power from the new engines. The strategic bombers also received conventional rotary launchers in 2016, which enabled the aircraft to drop 8 Joint Direct Attack munitions or several Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff missiles from its belly. However, that system was limited to supplying power to only 4 munitions at a time, which slowed the rate at which bombardiers could drop weapons, possibly forcing the aircraft to make multiple passes over a target. Recently, in February 2019, Boeing started testing an upgraded rotary launcher that is designed to power up more munitions at a time, giving bombardiers the ability to quickly select from a greater variety of smart weapons at short notice. Compared with the cost of operating and sustaining other heavy bombers, the B-52 is not particularly expensive. As reported by Loren Thompson in Forbes, June 2, 2020, citing David Axe, the B-52 is economical. It costs around $70,000 to fly a B-52 for 1 hour. That's roughly the same as what a B-1 costs for an hour of flight, and half what a B-2 costs. The B-52 is certain to remain in the heavy bomber fleet, even as other newer bombers head for the boneyard. After all these years, the Air Force still can't do without it. If you like these types of videos, subscribe to our channel and get notification when we release new episodes. For more interesting military history content, check out our video library.